This podcast is supported by 23andMe.ca, a personalized genetic service available in Canada. 23andMe reports provide genetic information based on a small saliva sample. Canadians can learn about their genetic information that published studies have associated with conditions and traits like celiac disease, cystic fibrosis, and even response to certain medications. More information is available at 23andme.ca.
What's up, music, skippers? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the takeover of the BS show. This is Trash Canyon in the house, and I put Boyd Sharpe back where he belongs and where he spent most of his high school years, in the locker. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Skippy, for letting us do this show tonight, my friend.
Hey, for you, brother, no problem. You're bringing on some legendary friends, and there's no way we could say no to this.
I appreciate it a lot, Skip. Boyd is planning on taking the month of April off, well-deserved, and we're going to hand off the show this month to some other people. I know that Amy, our correspondent in New Brunswick, is going to do next week's show, but I want to take an opportunity this week to get back to my roots. Most of you know that I do come from a pro wrestling background. It was a wicked career for me. I had a chance to, travel all over Atlantic Canada, across Canada, and even internationally. I spent some time over in England and met some great people over there. It was a wonderful career for me, great guys, and I wanted to pay a little tribute to that tonight. So I hope that you fans of mixed martial arts and combat sports at least take a listen to what we're going to talk about, what's involved in the pro wrestling industry. I think you'll find it kind of interesting. So I appreciate it, Skip.
Oh, I'm super excited. Like I said, you got some legends coming on. And towards the end of the show, we're going to touch on some MMA anyway, but I'm super excited, and I know tonight you're going to have a special guest host with you, so that's cool.
Yeah, tonight we're going to use words like work, marks, kayfabe, spots. Those are the kind of things that we're going to be talking about tonight, and I think most of the people out there nowadays know those words that are going to understand them. So, Skip, before I introduce my co-host for tonight, you and I were talking off air last week. You've had some crazy things proposed to you about fighting and MMA and maybe how that should be presented. Do you remember telling me about a couple of them?
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about the gentleman that was bullying on the web?
No, I'm talking about the tag team stuff, the five-man stuff.
Oh, yeah. Look, I'm all for, tag team jiu-jitsu, but, 2-on-2 MMA, 5-on-5, basketball with MMA, football with it, soccer with MMA, all this is no. I think if you're going to go and do that and you want to be part of that world, then you should probably be a professional wrestler because you're going to get your chance to go 5-on-5. You're going to get your chance to go 2-on-2. But in combat sports, I don't believe it should be anything more than 1-on-1. Yeah,
now you did mention tag team jiu-jitsu. Explain that concept. That's a new one to me. I haven't heard that.
Dude, tag team jiu-jitsu is blowing up here in the Pacific Northwest where I live. And what it is two guys team up, obviously, self-explanatory, and each guy is stuck in a corner, the blue corner or the red corner in the cage. And you must be touching the corner pad, and you can tag your partner and take over in the match, just like a traditional wrestling match. But it's jiu-jitsu only. So, one guy got stuck in an armbar, and he was about to tap, but he could reach his partner and tag him in, and his dude came over and threw a rear naked choke on the other guy and finished him off, So it's a really interesting concept, because it's bringing your original world and passion into the jiu-jitsu world. And I know a lot of jiu-jitsu purists out there right now are rolling over, but it's an exciting match when you have guys tagging in and out at different sizes, different weight classes, going at it. I watched a guy who fights traditionally at 155 sub a dude at 205 after about a 6-minute scramble in the middle of the cage. So it's really enjoyable.
I love the idea, I'll be honest. And I've seen some of the 5-man fights stuff on YouTube. I agree, man. That stuff is shit. It's a crap. I wouldn't mind personally seeing a tag team MMA fight. I think that could be really cool to see. I don't think we'll ever see it, and I think, like you said, the purists will be rolling over just listening to this kind of stuff. But folks, it's entertainment. It's entertainment. So if stuff works sometimes, there's no harm in trying it. But tell me about, again, the one that somebody had spoke to you about, the maze or whatever. I thought that was really cool. Talk about that one.
This is a completely different concept, folks. This is called arena combat. It originally came out of Russia. I've been watching it for years. Originally called the Hip Show, for anybody out there who knows what I'm talking about. Some buddies of mine in America bought the rights to the company and brought it here stateside. And what it is the concept is this is urban combat at close quarters. So let's say me, you, and Harold are walking out of a bar at 2 a.m. and 3 gangbangers come up and try to, take our money. How would it play out? Because there's cars, there's a parking lot, there's walls, there's stairs maybe, or a trash can. So they built I think it's 60 by 60 obstacle course, and it's you and 2 buddies take on 3 other guys, and it's knockout submissions, and everything's padded and set up, but it gives you a chance, like, if a bigger guy's chasing you, could you get underneath this obstacle, come around, and be able to stand toe-to-toe at that point and be, maybe at a better advantage because you've come up behind him, or could you jump up on top of something to get away from a guy who's out striking you, and to get your bearings back. And it's an amazing event, and it's urban combat. It has nothing to do with MMA. It's called urban combat. It's boxing, kickboxing, judo, wrestling, street fighting, all wrapped into one on an obstacle course, and it's an amazing time.
It's a pretty cool concept, I got to admit. So now, folks, I have to bring in my co-host for the night. Like I said, we got rid of one nerd tonight, so one is mandatory on the show at all times. So knowing that we were doing the show on pro wrestling tonight, there's one fella that it immediately leapt right to the front of my mind, and that's Harold Kennedy. Now, for some of you folks, you do recognize that name. For other folks, you may recognize him by his online name, which he goes by New Scott. He is a gentleman that I got to know quite well over the years, was involved in the Cubicle to the Cage program, and is an absolute authority on professional wrestling, both locally and independent, and on the federation level as well. Harold, thanks so much for coming to the show tonight and helping me out with this.
Oh, not a problem at all. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
No problem, buddy. So first, before we get started, why don't we talk about the Cubicle to the Cage program? You were involved in that. What brought you into that program? What motivated you to try out for that? And what did you bring away from the entire experience?
It was by far the hardest thing I had ever done. I used to be 120 pounds at 5'11", and which is the reason I never got involved in professional wrestling. I eventually started going to the gym. I got in good shape, and I was too old to be a wrestler. And not that I wasn't too old to be an MMA fighter too, but there was never going to be an opportunity for me to ever try anything around like that again. I was never going to be able to make the Ultimate Fighter or something like that. And when this opportunity came up, I went to the tryouts, and I didn't make the show originally, and then I met up with Boyd, and he let me on the show, and it was an amazing experience. I thought I was in shape going in, and it's a completely different level of athlete that does that. And I was probably in better shape than most people that were there, and I was dying at the end of every class. It was insane.
So, Harold, when I remember you in the program, and there were a lot of people there initially, and so I didn't really get to know people that well, but you really seemed to excel at the physical fitness of the whole thing. You know, if we were doing crunches or push-ups, and at that time, Coach was pushing us to the absolute max, trying to break people, you seemed to enjoy that aspect of it. When it came to the actual fisticuffs, I think that's when you made the decision that it wasn't really for you at that time. Peter Martell, the trainer in the show, told me that my physical conditioning was better than everyone else's, but my technique was the worst. And I felt I was okay on the ground, but once it came to the stand-up, I was terrible. I couldn't figure out how to throw a proper punch to save my life. When we were sparring, if I wasn't able to take the guy down, it was going nowhere really fast. I mean, and that's where I kind of stopped once the stand-up kind of started to take over, because I was so bad at it. But the physical stuff was awesome. I could do that stuff for days. I mean, if you go back and watch the footage, I won every competition that they had: the wall sit competition, the hang from the rope competition, the lunge down sackville drive competition. Like, I was first in all of those, but it was the rest of it that was pretty hard. So when the whole experience was over, everybody got to sit back and look at what they actually gained from that program. And for you, what would you say that would be?
Cardio. I gained a new level of respect, way more than I had before, of the guys, of how tired you actually get. I mean, and we were just training, of the guys that are in there actually fighting. I mean, it looks like they're standing there doing nothing sometimes, and it couldn't be the more opposite. Like when, say, you're up against the cage or something like that, it's brutal, and the fans will be booing, and knowing like 1% of what it is that they go through, I watch it a completely different experience. Like the level of commitment these guys go through not to get tired is incredible.
That's awesome, my friend. So tonight we're going to talk about some wrestling. We've got about 5 minutes here before our first guest is going to come on, and we just witnessed quite a spectacle in San Francisco last week. WrestleMania 31, 77,000 people in attendance. I think that just goes to show that there still is a place for professional wrestling in today's modern entertainment world.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's funny you say that they do that 77,000 seat arena, but they do that every year. When it comes to mixed martial arts, Dana White had a problem with doing the Sky Dome for that many people, but yet professional wrestling do that all the time. Like, they will fill that. They're doing AT&T Stadium, Cowboy Stadium next year, with 105,000 people.
So tonight we're going to focus on a little bit of our first guest, folks, actually off the top, and I won't do the intro right now, but we have him coming on in about 5 minutes, and we're really looking forward to that because, here's the thing, Harold. I have an appreciation for both MMA and pro wrestling, as you do. And I find that most of the guys in the gym love talking about it. They love chatting about it. You know, did you see what was on Raw last night? Which Raw, I believe, is the longest-running syndicated show on cable television, Monday Night Raw.
It's the longest-running weekly episodic show of all time.
Yeah, amazing. So, we find there's a lot of respect back and forth between pro wrestlers and MMA, but we don't really see it with the fans too much, do we?
No, not at all. The crossover between MMA and wrestling is with the athletes itself. The wrestlers and the fighters love what each other does. But if you were to ask an MMA fan about pro wrestling, they'll just trash it. They can't stand it. There might be one or two that like it, but the majority of them just think it's the stupidest thing in the world.
But interesting, we do see the camaraderie around the athletes and the respect between the two sports.
Yeah, absolutely. You could go back and watch one of the early UFCs after a Matt Hughes fight. You'll see the Undertaker. It's an extra on one of the UFC DVDs. He goes into Matt Hughes' locker room, and Matt Hughes acts like an 8-year-old child around the Undertaker. He's just in awe of this guy, and vice versa with the Undertaker and Matt Hughes. They're just marking out for each other.
Now, at this WrestleMania, of course, we always do see a lot of celebrities. We saw the Cross this year. They brought in Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was back. And he had a special guest from the mixed martial arts world, Ronda Rousey.
Yep. And the funny thing about that is I sat a couple rows behind Ronda Rousey at SummerSlam in Los Angeles last year while they ushered in and out every other celebrity. The cast of Deadliest Catch was there. They came in and out just to appear on camera. The young guy, I can't think of his name, from Hot Tub Time Machine was there. They ushered him in and out just to put on camera. Ronda Rousey and her 3 friends sat front row the entire time and cheered and acted just like everyone else that was in the building.
And this is a unique time, too, because when we look at one of the top guys in the WWE, you're seeing a guy that went from professional wrestling, an absolute athlete, no one will ever dispute that, stepped into the MMA world and dominated it, regardless if you liked them there or not. This guy, in a very short period of time, stepped into that world, took their title, and is now back in pro wrestling. So there is a tremendous amount of crossover that seems to be going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone in mixed martial arts thinks Chael Sonnen's promos don't come from pro wrestling, they're crazy. That's strictly what he does, is cut pro wrestling promos.
Well, speaking of WrestleMania, I would like to take this time to bring in our first guest of the night, who was at WrestleMania 31 this year. He is an absolute true legend in professional wrestling and one of the hardest working people that I've ever personally met. A 2015 inductee into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, Bushwacker Luke Williams. Bushwacker, are you with us, my friend?
Yes, I am here, mate. It's great to be on your show.
It's really great.
Talking about both kinds of sports. As you said, it's a cross between the UFC or MMA, as you say, and the wrestling. You know, a lot of the wrestling fans became strong MMA fans.
Absolutely. Luke, I've had the great pleasure of working with you many times over the years. You're one of the true ambassadors of the sport, one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and congratulations on being put into the Hall of Fame this year.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Rick. And it's been a lot of hard work. I first came to this North America in 1972, and my first port was Quebec for a company called Grand Prix, which was running 3 shows a night. It was a very strong company at the time, out of Montreal, running across Ontario, Quebec, and into Manitoba. And so that was my first 2 years in the country, in North America, working there. And it's been a long road, and I've been in many, many countries. Once I got into the WWF, I was touring in the 80s and 90s, touring 40-something companies a year, and finally I've gone onto the biggest stage in pro wrestling. It was the 2015 Hall of Fame out there in California.
It's been an amazing.
One of the main things of the night was, Ronda Rousey with The Rock, with Hunter and Stephanie. That wasn't advertised. That was a shock to, I guess, to the people. They all knew who she was because she's from that area, right?
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey, she's from California.
Yeah, she lives in Venice.
Yeah, so that was being with The Rock, of course, and that was a big plus with the owners with the actual owners of the company. So that was the highlight of the night. One of the highlights of the night.
For sure. Luke, I want to get to your experience being backstage, meeting a lot of the guys that you worked with throughout the years, and what that night meant to you personally.
It was great to see. Well, when I was there, mate, I have a gym on Clearwater Beach, physical, a fitness center and of course, Hogan has a shop right underneath me. So I've been friends with Terry for, since the 80s. But there was a lot of friends that when I first came over here, Roddy Piper, who now lives in L.A. and does a lot of, he's been in the movie as Rowdy Roddy Piper from the first WrestleMania, and now we're at 31. He was there, and when our presentation was made and we're out in the convention center, we actually got Roddy to get up and come up to the stage with us. And he's an old friend, The Undertaker. And I heard you talking about him before. He's a real martial art fan. Look what he did with Brock Lesnar a couple of years ago. That's a year ago, WrestleMania. Brock Lesnar's the one that took him down for the first time in 21 years. It's great to see The Undertaker.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't imagine what that back room, would have looked like. All the celebrities and stars from all the years of pro wrestling. So for you to reach the Hall of Fame, being a professional wrestler in the industry, it must be a huge honor to actually, walk that stage at a WrestleMania and know you've earned your place in history now.
Yeah, it was. When they first mentioned us in the start of February, the Bushwhackers were going into the Hall of Fame. It was very negative media because the new generation, they only seen us as the clowns in WWF. We came in '88 into the WWF with a character gimmick that was more entertaining. It was a cross between the Stooges, Crocodile D Down Under, and wrestling. We brought a sort of a new thing, a hyped up version of wrestling, but entertainment with it. But then when they found out and they started looking into our past and saw what we'd been and where we'd been, and what we had done, then they realized where we'd come from. It was a long road.
Absolutely.
From first hearing our negative side.
Well, we get that out of some of the newer generation fans, but for people like me that grew up watching you in the 80s, walking down the aisle, licking your partner's head, it absolutely was a thrill, and it was something that, fans from our generation will never forget. Harold, I know you have a question or two for Luke, so why don't you jump in?
Yeah, first off, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. But it seemed, in my opinion, your partner, Butch, stole the show at the Hall of Fame with his speech. It seemed like you didn't say a lot, that you kind of led him the way. How come? I led him into the stories. Right. Yeah. Was that just? That's what we've always done that. I wrote all the stuff down and all the stories down, and he tells them. I bring it up and he finishes them off. He finishes the story off. It's amazing to me that they didn't give him the microphone 25 years ago when you guys were in WWE. I mean, he stole the show. Yeah, that's Butch. Once you give him the mic, even when we were on tour, of course, we were the sheep herders. We were the bad guys from 72 to 88, and we're on Turner Network from 1980.
that a lot of people don't know, is the sheep herders, and they couldn't fathom when we went to WWF how we changed. We sort of had a hardcore brand before hardcore became a name brand. If you know where I'm coming from. We were rough and bloody, and we worked a completely different style. And that barbed wire matches, barbed wire cage matches, chain matches, all that blood and gut stuff. And then we changed to that family sort of entertainment, from what the kids liked and the grandparents like. So, and Butch was always the mouthpiece like that. I let him into the things, and he took it from there.
Awesome. And was there anything about the order induction of the Hall of Fame that surprised you? Perhaps like the Macho Man not going in last, being the last inductee of the night?
Well, and I understand that, mate. They like to put someone alive. Even though he was the main person in the induction, they he's, God bless him, he's gone now, and they like to put someone alive. And I know where our place was because we used to do it all the time too. We used to close the WWF. We were the last match to send the people away entertained. As we came straight after the story about the kid who died of cancer. This kid, Connor the Crusher, which brought the people down, and they're feeling pretty bad. So they shot us in there, and we lifted the people up.
You sure did.
That's what Vince does. He knows where to place people in sort of things like this.
Well, thank you very much, Luke, for taking the time to come on the show. I know the fans loved hearing from you and your great career. Just take a minute right now and put out any thank yous that you would like to do to anyone. This is your time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody who pushed for us for the Hall of Fame. That is in all sports across the board. I'm a sportsman. I'm a sports enthusiast. Tonight is the Final Four. On television. I've got that in front of me right now. I love sport, mate. All kinds of sport. But Rick, I know you're from Canada, but one I don't understand, which is strong in Canada, and that's curling. I guess you gotta have it. That curling has just got me. I know we're going off the board here talking about that, but I like contact sports. Where my gym is, a couple of doors down the road, I have a sports bar there he runs all the MMA, UFC, and he draws big crowds right on Clearwater Beach. So if any people are down Clearwater Beach way, pop in to see Clearwater Beach Fitness. That's clearwaterbeachfitness.org or .com. That's my gym on the beach.
Thanks so much, Luke. I appreciate it, and congratulations, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your show.
Cheers. Well, there you go, Harold. Now, there's quite an interview from an absolute legend of the pro wrestling industry.
Absolutely. He's been around the world more than once, seen and done just about everything there is to do in wrestling.
He's a guy that I'm not sure how old Luke is.
68, I think.
What is it?
68, I think. He was born in 1947, I think.
Okay, 68 years ago. I know that he has. I know that he has over 40 years in the industry. And he's the hardest working guy. I mean, he is literally wrestling every night of the week somewhere on the globe. And the kids love him. He comes down the aisle. He's got his hands going. And he is that character. He is that guy. You've met him, Harold. You know what he's like.
Absolutely. He was here quite regularly for 4, 5, 6 years or something. He was here every other week. He worked so hard. I could only imagine how hard he worked in WWE if he worked as hard as he did wrestling in front of 100, 150 people that he did here. Like, it's unreal, the effort and he put into making the show the best it could possibly be.
Yeah, and he's a true tough guy who understands the industry completely. He's talking about doing the hardcore matches back in the day, and, all you have to do is look at the guy's forehead to know that he has had thousands of battles.
Yeah, they were hardcore before hardcore was cool. They were hardcore before hardcore was called hardcore.
And then they took that and they turned it into something that put a smile on your face and made kids happy and just an amazing transformation of their characters as well.
Yeah, he once told me, it's not an exact quote, but the gist of it was he traveled the world and bled everywhere and didn't make a lot of money. He came to WWE, licked people, and moved his hands up and down and became a millionaire.
Now, I noticed that you asked about the Macho Man incident. We had tried to get Lanny Poffo on the show tonight, and for anybody listening, Lanny was a mainstay in independent wrestling here in Atlanta, Canada. For many years, he was known as Leapin' Lanny Poffo. He went to the WWE, became the Genius there, and more famously, his brother is the Macho Man. So I noticed you brought that up, Harold, that you think that perhaps Lanny was a little miffed that Macho Man was not the last inductee this year.
Yeah, I do. The word going around was that he wanted the entire family inducted together, which is why it took so long for the Randy Savage DVD to come out as well. He wanted the entire family, him and his dad, to be inducted together. And the WWE didn't want all three of them. They just wanted Randy Savage. He's the only one that became super famous in that company. And it took them a long time to work a deal with Lanny in order to get Macho Man into the Hall of Fame. And I think he's a little bit upset at that.
Well, quite possibly. And, there's the thing right there that Luke understands so well, because he picked up exactly what you were asking and mentioned that they needed somebody that was alive to end that show. So we saw Kevin Nash and the NWO come in. Luke understands that so well, because everything in that business is done for a reason.
Yep.
You would think
and not that Kevin Nash wasn't a big star, but Macho Man was the first person they announced, and he people have been wanting him to go into the Hall of Fame forever, right? And Kevin Nash could have gone in 20 years from now, and it wouldn't have made a difference.
Well, it's unfortunate we couldn't get Lanny on the show tonight. We've met him a number of times, but obviously he was just tied up tonight and couldn't get back to me. It would have been nice to give him a congratulations as well, putting his brother in there for sure.
Absolutely. He did have a great speech.
So Bushwacker Luke spent a tremendous amount of time down in Puerto Rico working with the organizations down there. And one of our next guests spent a tremendous amount of time down in Puerto Rico with Bushwacker Luke. What this gentleman, I believe, is a role model, and I hate to say that, but he is a role model to every new wrestler coming into professional wrestling, a guy who has traveled internationally, and understands this business very, very well, and understands the cross-promotion between mixed martial arts and pro wrestling. Folks, I'd like to introduce the pride of Prince Edward Island, Cowboy Mike Hughes. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me back, Rick. It's always a pleasure.
When we put this show together tonight, you were the first guy that shot to my mind here as far as bringing someone on to explain exactly what pro wrestling is and where it is going to go. So, first of all, can you explain to me what you feel pro wrestling is? Like, explain pro wrestling to me.
I think pro wrestling, it's always been the same. There's always been some twists over the years, and people have tried to make it as complicated as possible, and it kind of had its ups and downs because of that. But at the end of the day, pro wrestling it's about athleticism, action, entertainment, and getting people emotionally attached to the show. And those are all the ingredients that are needed to get pro wrestling, to succeed. And for some reason over the years, people have tried to reinvent the wheel. But at the end of the day, if you keep things simple, it's good versus evil. It's athleticism, it's action, it's excitement. And that's what you have to have as part of your matches, as part of your show. And you have to be able to tell that story throughout the show. And people try to make, like I said, that really difficult. And when you try to overcomplicate things, some of all that gets lost and the fans get confused. But if you keep it simple and you keep it basic and you keep those elements in a pro wrestling show, then the fans go home happy, the wrestlers go home happy, and everybody wins and they come back again. So that's kind of the Cole's Notes version of what I think pro wrestling is.
Awesome. So I want you to take off your promoter hat for a minute because in case you wonder,
it's stuck on.
I know it is. Mike also does some promoting, and we'll talk about that in a bit because I know he has an upcoming show. But Mike, I'd like you to tell the folks right here a little bit about yourself and your personal history. What got you started in the business, and some of the stuff you've done.
I started like everybody that started in this business. I was a fan. I went to pro wrestling with my father whenever, I was 8-9 years old. I grew up watching Grand Prix wrestling like everybody in Atlantic Canada did. It was a mainstay of your weekly routine. Everybody, when you were a kid, you watch cartoons when you get up Saturday morning, and then the afternoon you ate lunch and you watch Grand Prix wrestling. That's how Atlantic Canadians were raised. I know, you probably did the same thing, and I know Harold did. So, or maybe he wasn't even. I know he wasn't probably even old enough to remember Grand Prix wrestling. I don't know.
I grew up watching you.
Jesus. So there you go. Harold's now told my age, so I guess I don't have to get into all that. But I grew up watching that, and then it changed over to WWE, and I wanted to be, a pro wrestler. But like most kids, they think it's unachievable, and that that stuff that happens on TV, and a lot of Maritimers that just don't give themselves that option that they can do that. But one day I always thought I was too small for wrestling, believe it or not. No, I never was really aware of my size really, because I grew up.
You're the little brother.
Well, yeah, I grew up the smallest in my family, so I'm 6'5.5", and I'm 265 pounds, but I was always a little guy in my family, so I never had that I'm a big guy kind of complex. And then one day I seen Edge and Christian and Scott D'Amore and Glenn Kolka here working out at a gym, and I just struck up a conversation with Glenn Kolka. Kolka came up to me. I didn't even know he was a wrestler because there was no promotion done in the area for pro wrestling. Grand Prix was off of TV at the time. This was 96 or 97. And Glenn Kolka was this massive guy. And on Prince Edward Island, everybody knows everybody. So when there's a new guy walks in the gym, he's not from there. So we started talking. He asked me if I wanted to work out, and two of us were working out. He actually said to me, he goes, "Do you want to work out with me?" He goes, "I'm not going to be changing all plates all day with those two skinny guys." And he pointed to Edge and Christian. So I said, "Yeah, sure, we trained back," and I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, I'm a wrestler." And I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "I always wanted to do that, but I never thought I was big enough." He goes, "Big enough? Look at those two skinny guys over there. Those are two guys already signed to WWF. They're just down here getting experience." So he gave me a phone number. He gave me Emile Dupre's phone number. I sat there on the phone number for a while, didn't call it. I was kind of like, I don't think I'm big enough. I still don't think I'm big enough. Still don't think I'm big enough. And finally, when I thought I was big enough, I called Emile and we set up training. Went over to train in Shediac, slept in my van, packed up my dog, went over, slept in my van, and started training with Emile. Couldn't really understand his version of the English language, so training was a little difficult at first. I didn't know what the boom boom or the bloop bloop or the Bing Bing was, so didn't really go real smooth at first. So then he brought in Hubert Gallant, who was a star with Grand Prix. You know, he's pretty much a clone of Leo Burke, Leo Burke, I believe, is one of the greatest of all time in this business. And, you know, I started training with him, and probably a few months later, baptism by fire and got thrown right onto a full-time circuit and started with Grand Prix, and just went from there.
The worst thing I can ever do is ask you to talk because there is no stopping you, but I know Harold has a question for you before I fire away. But Mike, before I hand you to Harold, will you tell us about some of your travels, places that you've been as well, competing over the years?
I've been very fortunate. I kind of got in at the end of an era when there was lots of veterans around and there were still some very active territories. And you know, I went to England first, was my first overseas thing, and I got to work with Brian Dixon from All Star Wrestling. I was over there with you, Rick, for a couple of months, I think, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. And, you know, and I was there for a couple of years before that, off and on, and I was very fortunate. I got to work with some of the best wrestlers, as you know, Rick. Some of the best wrestlers that nobody will ever hear of come from, you know, England. The most technical, the most, you know, fundamentally sound wrestlers in the world, I believe, are from England. So, and then, you know, I got to go to the famous Hanover tournaments in Germany, worked the Hanover tournament there, got to work with some, you know, super talented guys like Dave Taylor, Rick Steiner, Robbie Brookside, Kendo Kashin from New Japan, a lot of super talented guys, and got to learn a lot from all those veterans there. And after that, I got a call, and I went back to England after that, and then I got a call, and they asked me when I could start in Puerto Rico, and I went down to Puerto Rico with Luke, who you just mentioned, and just so everybody, now that Harold has said that I'm old, I just want people to know I'm not as old as Luke. You know, when I was down there, Luke was booking, he wasn't wrestling, so I'm not that old. So, but went down there, loved it there. The fans, we were selling out baseball stadiums. You know what I mean? I remember me and Apollo, one of the wrestlers from Puerto Rico, we've been doing some tours of Newfoundland lately, and we were saying the other night, I remember we'd be getting 3,000 people in the stadium, and everybody in the dressing room would be pissed. They'd be saying, there's nobody here, you know, and imagine if you got 3,000 fans now to a show that wasn't a WWE. You know, it was great down there, though. The weather was beautiful. It was a beautiful sandy beach. It was 30 degrees all the time. Huge crowds, massive fans, great wrestlers. Some of the most talented wrestlers in the world were there, in and out all the time, like great local guys, plus, you know, Rikishi, Vampiro, you know, The Undertaker was down there for a while, Kane was in there for a while, WWE was sending guys back and forth, you know, AAA was sending guys in and out, Japan was sending guys in and out, and we were the biggest stars on the island. You know, we were the #1 rated TV show in Spanish culture at one time, so that was amazing, you know. And then when I finished up down there, I got a call and I went to New Japan and had some great experiences there. And that's where I kind of developed my love for mixed martial arts, is because when I went to New Japan, they sent me to the LA dojo down in LA for a couple of weeks and started, you know, Japan, it's a little more serious. It's, you know, their pro wrestling is derived from MMA, so, in martial arts. So you have to, you know, people have to believe that you're believable. And, you know, I had some boxing and a little bit of kickboxing background, but I got down there and, you know, we did some jiu-jitsu and we did some submission wrestling and, you know, got to do a lot of that. And then they thought I was good enough, so they sent me over to New Japan and got to work in New Japan, like Sumo Hall at the G1, which for people who aren't familiar with Japanese wrestling, that's the WrestleMania of Japan. And got to work a legend, Mr. Saito, got to work him at the G1. And I got to work with some amazing people over there. Jushin Liger, Fujinami, who just got inducted into the Hall of Fame in WWE. I worked a tag match with him, Harry Smith and I. You know, worked against him and Tenzan. And then after that I went to Korea, you know, and spent some time, Brody Steele and I, Peter Smith. went back and forth to Korea there for a while. We'd be going over a week, a month, something like that, and just amazing. Pro wrestling has been so good to me. I've got to see the world and got paid to do it. So, a lot of people are bitter about pro wrestling and, I didn't get this or I didn't get that, but you'll never hear me say a bad word about the actual business of pro wrestling. Things that happen in it maybe, but the business. Yeah.
Mike, we could talk for hours about this, and
I could.
Oh, I know, and I could too. And there's so much to talk about. We only have about 5 minutes left because we have another guest coming on, and I know Harold has a question. So I'm going to put you over to Harold for his question, and I'm going to bring you back for an opportunity to thank your sponsors. But the one thing that we didn't get a chance to talk on, Mike, was the cross-promotion between MMA. I know you work with a lot of the guys over in Prince Edward Island, Jason Sago in the UFC, Matt McGrath, all of Paul Abel's guys. I know that Jason Mosier, the owner of Naturally Fit, sponsors a lot of pro wrestling, plus he sponsors a lot of MMA guys. I know you work very closely with them. Unfortunately, we didn't get into that tonight, but I want to put you over to Harold, and then I'm going to bring you back for a chance to promote your upcoming show. Okay, my friend?
Thanks, buddy.
All right, Harold, go ahead.
All right. You've trained some of the best wrestlers that we've had here in Atlantic, Canada over the past few years. Now you train yourself at a gym where some of the UFC fighters train. What's the difference since this is an MMA-based show, the difference between the training in pro wrestling and the training that you see the UFC fighters doing on a daily basis?
With the training, I find pro wrestlers, after they learn the basics and the fundamentals, they don't practice the basics and the fundamentals near as much as MMA guys do. MMA guys, they practice the fundamentals, religiously, like hours and hours a day. But with pro wrestlers, and I say this, not all of them lately, but it's getting better, I will acknowledge that, is pro wrestlers, used to spend more time like myself and Brody Steele, and, there's guys like, Andre Boulanger from Quebec and, Mark Roussel. We spend a lot of time in the gym and, a lot of focus. And Josh Stone here and Chris Cook here spends a lot of time in the gym now. He's kind of rededicated himself with Jason Mosier's help to getting in shape. But spend a lot more time in the weight room. And I notice, some of the MMA guys, they kind of, the weight training part is all new to them, the strength and the conditioning, but it's really added to them now that I know Matt McGrath is a beast now. Jason Mosier has brought him to a different level of strength. He's now working with Jason Sago, and Sago, who is a phenomenal athlete and so flexible and everything, but he's just getting killed in the gym now by Mosier. And, Mosier teases him. He calls their training sessions whining with Sago because he finds it so brutal. So the weight training and the strength component part of pro wrestling I think, is more natural for the guys who take pro wrestling serious. And with the MMA, the routine and the technique and everything and the just getting kicked and punched, that's more natural for them than the strength and the conditioning. Not the conditioning that they get in their technique training is beyond. It's phenomenal. But I think it's the strength part that's the real difference that I've noticed watching Jason train MMA guys and wrestling guys. You'll see guys, like I said, Josh Stone, Chris Cook, Peter Smith, guys that are just beasts in the gym lifting incredible poundage. And then the guys in the MMA, that aren't lifting real big weights, but they're such great athletes that when they start that weight training, they just excel at it phenomenally. But I think the strength part is really new to the MMA industry, I think, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing a lot more muscular physiques than you have in the past in MMA.
Definitely.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about this a lot more, and unfortunately we're completely out of time with you. But I do find this very relevant and very important and to know what's going on. One thing that we do have is a high tolerance for pain in both in both disciplines. So, Mike, take a quick minute right now and just put a thank you out to any sponsors or supporters, please.
My sponsors have been amazing. The Factory Cookhouse and Grill, Quick Copy Printing, Red Rock Island Naturally Fit has been my backbone, my life system as far as everything. Jason Mosier has been there for me for everything. You know, I have so much support over here. Islanders hockey, you know, with the Charlottetown Islanders, we've been doing some cross promotion stuff here lately. It's been phenomenal, the support that they've been giving me. So just the island in general, man. Prince Edward Island's had my back from day one since I've started Red Rock Wrestling. And Red Rock Wrestling has a show coming up April 10th. You know, it's worth the drive. If you're from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, let me tell you, our shows here are awesome. The crowds are phenomenal. Like, they're just...
Yeah, I'll second that. The crowds in Stratford are the best wrestling crowds I've ever seen anywhere. I've been to shows all over Atlantic Canada and the States, and nothing compares to the crowds in Stratford. Doesn't even come close.
It's crazy. It's one of the most, from the start to the finish, from the time the bell rings till the time the show, they turn on the lights at the end of the night. These fans are incredible, and Islanders have supported me, like I said, since day one. Our motto has been Islanders for Islanders, and it shows every night we do anything, whether it's fundraising. For this year's fundraising is going to be a year-long campaign for the Children's Wish Foundation, and so that's what we're doing for this year, all our shows and all our fundraising efforts with me and Jason Mosier, Children's Wish Foundation, and we're going to try to make a couple of kids' dreams come true this year.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Mike. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, buddy. Anytime. Love being on the show. Love talking to you. And good job, Harold, filling in for Boyd.
Thank you very much. the big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill for sure. I got a chance to meet Boyd at your last fight there. Congratulations again, Rick, on your victory at the last event. It was awesome. I was proud as, you know, like I was like an old man being proud of his son, even though you're, 30 years older than me or whatever, but still.
Cheers, mate.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a good night. Thanks again.
Have a good one.
No problem. It doesn't take long for an hour to blow by, Harold, when you've got pro wrestlers on the phone. And the last thing you want to say is
I can sit and listen to them talk all day long.
Yeah. I really wanted to go into some of the cross-promoting, but we just simply ran out of time. And some of the training that these guys do together. Another guest I wanted to get on tonight's show, and we couldn't make contact, was Harry Smith that Mike had mentioned. Harry is the son of the British Bulldog that was in the WWE in the 80s. Very close connection with the Hart family. And we've had a lot of those folks down in our neck of the woods and gotten to know them over the years. Tremendous heroes in Canada, the Hart family.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, the Hart family, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like they're the Wayne Gretzky of wrestling, if that makes sense, or I don't really have an MMA analogy to use, but they are it in Canada.
Yeah. For sure. It blows right by, so we got to bring in our last guest to join us here tonight, Steve Arsenault. Steve's a very good friend of mine, goes under the professional wrestling name of Double XL. Steve, are you with us?
I'm here, guys. How you doing?
Not too bad, my friend. And listen, I got to apologize. It's just that this hour blew by so fast. I only have a couple of minutes for you. And I apologize for that from the bottom of my heart. I'd love the opportunity to talk to you more, Steve, but please, can you give us a rundown on the upcoming show that's going on in the Halifax Forum this week? I only got a couple of minutes for you, but I want you to do a shout-out to the amazing talent that's coming to this area this week.
Absolutely. So I'm a good plug guy, so here we go. So we got Thursday, April 9th at the Halifax Forum. Wrestle Center action. In the main event, we have Samoa Joe going against the IFWA heavyweight champion, Christopher Daniels. Both these guys are world-class wrestlers, have been all around the world applying their craft, and that one alone, is worth the price of admission. But on top of that, we have yours truly, Double XL, facing Matt Seidel, who is formerly known as Evan Bourne in the WWE. Phenomenal worker, and I got my definitely got my work cut out for him, or for myself against him. Been upping the cardio because this guy can go. Also, we got IHWC title match between Nick Diggs and the vegan Marcus Burke. This guy, if you've never seen him before, man, you'd be in for a treat. One entertaining performer, and that match is definitely not going to disappoint. So then we got your old buddies there, Rick. We got the Wild Man Gary Williams versus Brody Steele, and I'll throw that back to you at the end, and you can maybe give your thoughts on that. But also we got Lincoln Steen versus the Greaser James Carr, Shane Stevens versus Titus, and Dean Fisk versus Tommy Starr. So it's going to be a stacked deck from top to bottom.
That's awesome, Steve. Now, I just was granted a few extra minutes from the producer here. So I do want to talk about, just take a couple of minutes and talk about, you're a rising star here in Atlantic Canada. In the last few years, you've learned the trade. We've got an organization called Wrestle Center that started a couple of years ago and seems to be very, very successful in the Halifax area. Can you explain to me what you feel why their success?
Yeah. With my opinion with this group, compared to, what has been going on down here lately, I think a lot of times you have people sitting down, that have no clue, trying to put stuff together that's going to draw people into coming to watch it. With Wrestle Center, it feels like it was made for a wrestling fan, and by that I mean, the WWE now has kind of shifted more to a PG type rating. It's geared towards, more towards kids. I talked about this on a podcast the other night, and I said, what they forgot is that, the kids that they geared toward 20 years ago, they're all grown up now, and we still love wrestling. So I think what Wrestle Center has done is kind of filled that void and, kind of went back to, giving the wrestling fans that are, kind of in my age group, your late 20s, early 30s type deal, kind of what they want. I grew up on the Attitude Era, and, the product that WWE sells now is quite different. And I think a lot of people still like that style, that old nitty-gritty smash mouth wrestling style, that's entertaining, geared towards, I don't want to say we're geared more towards an adult audience, but you look through the crowd, there's not too many kids there. It's not that the show's racy or, the line or anything like that, but it's definitely I think it's drawing a more mature audience, and top to bottom, we give them a good show every night. Lots of twists and turns, always cliffhanger ending. I mean, last show, the lights dropped at the end of the night, and the lights came back on. Samoa Joe standing in the ring. So, if you're not a wrestling fan, Samoa Joe is a pretty big deal, and for him to show up unannounced like that, to me, and I think to the wrestling fans too, it shows that, Wrestle Center, it cares about hooking these people and giving them what they want and sending them home happy. And I'd like to think that every night we do a show, we send them home happy.
Steve, I want to give you an opportunity right now to do a shout-out. Thank you to any of your sponsors or supporters.
Well, you know what? If a sponsor or a supporter is hearing my voice, please contact me. Facebook, Steve Arsenault, ARSENAULT, or like me on Facebook, XXL, under Facebook as well, the fan page. And yeah, to me, I have had a lot of supporters along the way, a lot of people that help me out. I watch MMA, but I've never really, trained in any of those circles. But with wrestling, I like to think that, anyone that has some knowledge, to me, I've always, tried to sponge off of that knowledge, and you get little pieces here and there from other people. And, by the end of it, if you keep your eyes and your ears open, you learn along the way, at some point you look back and you realize you got a big bag of tricks. So definitely anyone that has let me pester them and talk their ear off about wrestling and trying to learn from them, that's been there for me, definitely a thank you. And, I've always tried to pay that forward too. If there's any way I could help out another worker, I'm going to do that. And so no, wrestling's been it's a great little community. We look out for each other. Promoters that book me, they treat me pretty good at Wrestle Center, so I got no complaints there at all. And, it's great.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Steve. Sorry we had to cut that short, my friend.
It's all right. As long as you people show up Thursday, April 9th, don't miss it.
Cheers. Well, there you go, Harold. That's how quick an hour can blow by. You did pretty good, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope people enjoyed it.
So it was it was definitely an interesting show. As far as we've got these guys that love what they do. They're entertainers. And I wasn't able to get into what they go through or what their training involves, but I think that there's still a spot for pro wrestling in today's entertainment world.
Absolutely. I think, personally, professional wrestling will always be bigger than mixed martial arts. Worldwide, no
I
question
agree.
about it.
Why would you say that? Skip, I invite you to jump in here, too, my friend.
Just look at what New Japan Wrestling is doing now on the American broadcasting system. I mean, look, wrestling will always be bigger than MMA, period. There's too many people who love the excitement, the drama, the storyline, and what is built in from – Steve hosting an event with local wrestlers all the way to the biggest show. It's just from age 6 to age 66, fans can find a character that they enjoy watching, that they feel, some kind of connection with. And it's not always the same in the combat world. And that's the biggest difference. Because even my son, you guys know, I'm huge, obviously, into the combat sports world. That's what my business is. But my son, he loves wrestling, and he has his favorite wrestlers, and you can't develop a fighter the same as you can a wrestler, because a fighter might be gone in a year, a wrestler might be around for 15, and I think that's the big difference.
Absolutely.
And you go back to what exactly it is. You don't want to take your kids to a pro wrestling or to a pro MMA show, really, but it's okay to take them to a pro wrestling show that caters to their emotion and builds those fans out of the kids. It's appropriate for them. It's good guys versus bad guys.
And pro wrestling is much more accessible than MMA. They run many more shows every night of the week in front of many more people. You may see your favorite fighter once or twice a year. You can see wrestling every day.
Harold, that's a great point, because in the state of Oregon, last year we had 4 pro MMA fights in the whole state, 4.
Yeah.
But we had 36 professional wrestling events.
Exactly.
Well, that's the reality of the history of this sport. I mean, it developed out of carnivals. And, people would pay to watch 2 guys fight. And, they quickly learned that they can't fight 100% every night and continue to do it night after night. So that's where the term work comes from, where you make it look like a real fight, and you're laying some shit in there pretty hard. You're taking a pounding, but you're not trying to kill the guy, that he wants to be able to work the next night. And that's the roots of professional wrestling, and that's what still exists to this day. It's done the exact same way.
Yeah, and people use the term fake. I prefer the term predetermined. There's nothing fake about what you guys do in the ring. I mean, are you hitting each other as hard as you can all of the time? No, but you're making contact 99% of the time.
Oh yeah, and it's very tough. I mean, those were things that I really wanted to get into tonight. Was the actual what goes on in that actual ring and the training. And the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight, which we didn't get into, is are we going to see problems in mixed martial arts like we've experienced in pro wrestling? The number of young deaths in pro wrestling are staggering. We saw a tremendous amount of them a few years ago. Is that something we're going to see in mixed martial arts as it continues to grow? Or are we going to see guys...
Yeah, you're
ahead.
seeing it right now. You're seeing it right now in Russia. In the last 2 months, we've had 4 deaths at the amateur level. There's been another 6 or 7 in the United States over the last 5 years. I mean, some were medical issues, some were accidents in the cage, and that happened in the middle of a fight. But yeah, we're kind of, you guys have figured a lot of things out in the wrestling world, and MMA has tried to snatch what they can and put it together to sell a show. But we're far, far away from being an established sport. Period. I think, we have a long ways to go.
Are the deaths in MMA from a result of the fighting or from what they do outside of the cage or ring? Most of the deaths in pro wrestling are from past drug use or suicide or things of that nature, right? Are the deaths in MMA from the actual fighting? Because there hasn't been that many, I don't think.
Well, here's my take on that, and I wish we had more time. We don't, but here's what it is. In professional wrestling, those guys, they live the life of a rock star. I mean, you're out on the road traveling city to city, and I've partied with a lot of these guys from the 80s. They were absolute rock stars in their day, and they were big into the party scene, and then you fast forward ahead 10 years when the lights are gone and the music's off, and they're still maintaining that lifestyle, and you see drug addiction, you see alcoholism, the painkillers and recreational drugs, and some people that couldn't fit into regular society. Now, is that something we're going to see in mixed martial arts in the next few years as that sport matures, or are they a different breed of person that's not going to get caught up in that? Only time will tell.
I hope not. I mean, I don't want to see that for anybody.
Well, no. I mean, your first response would be no. These guys are dedicated athletes that live regimented lifestyles. They're not going to get caught up in the drug and partying scene. That's your first reaction. But we have seen that happen in the past. Just recently.
That happen a lot this year.
Yeah, exactly. So what are going to happen to the guys like Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz and Matt Hughes when they're off that big stage? We're yet to see those psychological things happen in mixed martial arts yet.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. There's still quite some time before you're going to see that, because a lot of those guys are still somewhat involved. I mean, Matt Hughes still works there. Tito does stuff every now and again. I mean, they haven't completely left it yet.
Yeah, and those were just examples. But anyway, I know we're way over our time here right now, so there's a couple of quick things I do want to mention. Amy is going to be running the show next week. It's an all-female show. We're really looking forward to that. And I think she's going to do another one in 2 weeks after that. So it'll be a little different perspective, and we're really, really looking forward to that. We have the Abaya Jiu-Jitsu tournament coming up, and I think that's in about 3 weeks, and we'll have more information on that and John Foster and what he does down there with those guys in the next couple of weeks. Elite One has their show coming up in St. John on May 30th, and the Numa tournament that had, I think, 250 competitors in it last year. The judo tournament is going to be held again May 2nd in Spryfield. So we've got all kinds of combat action coming up. As well, you heard the wrestlers speak tonight that there is a show coming up this week from Wrestle Center in Halifax and Red Rock in Prince Edward Island. So I guess that's everything that I had here tonight, guys. Thanks so much for coming on, Skip, and doing this show for me. It meant a lot. And Harold, yourself as well.
Thank you very much for having me. Both of you guys, I appreciate it a lot.
So because Boyd...
Just so you know, Boyd wanted me to send you a personal message. You killed it. He was very impressed with you tonight. Harold and Rick, both of you guys, the fans, they were interaction. They loved the show. They really enjoyed the guests from, Steve, Luke, everybody that was on the show tonight. Mike, they enjoyed this thoroughly, so I hope down the road we can have you two back on to do another wrestling show.
That would be awesome.
Thank you.
I look forward to that. And we would really like to get into some of these fine points of training and stuff, so people really understand that business and that industry. So because Boyd's still stuck in a locker somewhere, I guess I'll have to use his sign out for tonight. So that's enough BS for tonight.
Welcome to the BS Show. Are you ready to shoot the... The BS Show would like to thank their sponsors. Jack Cameron, accredited mortgage professional. Jack can show you the way home. Draco Impact Sports, providing top quality combat sport equipment tested and used by all levels of athletes. Dominate your world. RepoSales.ca, specializing in vehicle and equipment recovery, liquidation, and sales. Hemmings House Pictures, the global movement media makers, helping tell your brand story to the world and accelerate the momentum of your movement. Farmbox Films, capturing stories the way you want to remember them.